our region, the Pacific Northwest, our fans, the Trailblazers are all very committed to the environment. I think sports has a really unique opportunity to raise awareness of ways that we can have a more positive impact on the world.
Materials that get left over in manufacturing are the materials that get left over at post-consumer waste. We try and convert them into really amazing products using design and innovation. So we founded LoopedWorks on a simple principle of basically taking excess and make it into useful.
So they actually took our uniforms and have turned them into cool, one-of-a-kind, high-end products. As a company, they're pretty much a zero-waste process. So for us as an organization that's trying to have zero waste, something that would otherwise go to the landfill, we can repurpose into items that fans can cherish.
That challenge gives us a window of opportunity to make our product unique for the fans.
PHC Northwest stands for Portland Habilitation Center. Our mission is to provide training, employment, and housing to people who face barriers to those things. And we do that by partnering with companies like LoopedWorks who hire us to do certain types of work. So when LoopedWorks comes to us with a really creative job like deconstructing Blazers jerseys, we get really excited because we're giving back to the community from a sustainability standpoint. So it's a perfect partnership.
One of the ways that we're trying to engage fans in our efforts is by having 5 green games.
The Green Games is a focus on the 5 pillars of sustainability. So there's a celebration of how the Blazers are trying to reduce their impacts in those areas.
We're able to tell the story of what we're doing from an environmental perspective so that we can reduce as much as possible the impact on the environment while also selling really cool special Blazers items to our fans.
Come on, give me some volume on this. Gotta wake up here. It's late afternoon. You all know this. All right, I'm good. Thanks, guys. Welcome back. Hope you had a fabulous day of breakout programming. I heard, I wasn't there, but I heard that Phillips mini session was packed with 50 people plus. Glad to hear that. Also heard that the Corning mini session has been rescheduled to 6:40 during our reception break. So check that one out too. So we're really glad to be back. I hope you really had a...
I don't know if it's gonna go.
There we go. All right. That got attention, huh? All right. So look, we're going to come right at you with 3 big presentations heading straight into our evening celebration program. First off, we're going to have Jeremy Jones up here, and Justin's going to introduce him in a moment. Fabulous. You're not going to want to miss that. Second, we're going to go right into college sustainability panel. Our fresh-faced, accomplished folks from the collegiate spec are here waiting. And then finally, we're going to go into the Pro League and Association update, which will lead us right into our evening of celebration, sponsored by MLB, NHL, NFL, NASCAR, and NatureWorks. So let's get to it without further ado. Justin Zoellner.
Thank you, Joe. And I'm not that tall, just like everybody else has to do. First, before I get started, I just wanted to say a personal thanks, and on behalf of all the staff, the board of directors, and hopefully all of you would join me in this, to say a little bit of gratitude for Joe and his team at the Green Bear Group. Joe and the Green Bear Group is our strategic advisor when it comes to communications, when it comes to public engagement and the campaigns that I keep talking about. So thank you, Joe. So the year was 1982. Another one of these defining moments for me. I was 10. Somebody said, strap on some Sorels. I never even heard what Sorels were. I put them on. Took about an hour and a half drive later. I strapped this thing on my feet. It was made of cardboard, if I remember correctly, or something like that. And the guy behind me probably remembers about this time. And I started going down this mountain. And it changed my life. We heard earlier from the surfing community, Duke was up here, about what surfing means to this whole interconnectivity and what it means from a culture standpoint. Well, snowboarding for that was me. That was my thing. I love snowboarding. So it's my pleasure to introduce somebody here in just a second that represents this industry. He's the biggest and best snowboarder on the history of this planet. So a real pioneer in all kinds of things. Jeremy Jones is a filmmaker, he's an entrepreneur, he's an innovator, he's a pioneer. He has been nominated for all kinds of awards for everything he does for the environment, when he thinks about climate change. One of the most impressive things that he's done is realize that he had a platform that snowboarding and the snow sports industry had a platform to engage with people. And he developed an organization called Protect Our Winners. A lot of you know who Protect Our Winners is. They've got an unbelievable organization, an incredible impact, and one that I'm very proud to be at least associated with, at least at any level. Another special thing about Jeremy is in 2013, he was recognized by President Obama as being a champion of change. This is kind of an interesting timeline for me personally and our movement, because the exact same day that he was receiving this incredible honor, we were also at the White House, and we were having our first convening actually in DC as a group. And all of a sudden this sports greening movement started to be becoming a thing. So actually our paths have actually paralleled almost in unison. And this gentleman really needs no introduction, but there's going to be a short film that I'm going to show you right now. So before he comes up, please watch this film. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what Jeremy Jones is all about.
Okay, so I'm on top. I don't know if it's gonna go. I can't see the line all the way. Kind of gripped.
There's the reality you've been told to accept.
I don't know what I'm gonna do, really.
Always nervous hitting something new. It's hard to say how big this really is. There's definitely a lot of exposure to follow.
Time is going to be critical for him. His skis have got to be moving to give him any kind of a chance.
Something to a run, because I don't think just cleaning it up and adding amplitude is going to get it done.
And then there's the story you choose to write. It's in our DNA to challenge the doubters, those who say it can't be done.
Floating that one. J.D. Davis will get on this one.
Those who sit safely on the sidelines.
Oh, no!
We are the outliers, the innovators, the wild men. We are rebellious in thought and wild at heart. We harvest joy from uncertainty and challenge. We are at our best when the stakes are highest. Now, this world is changing. Our glaciers are receding. Our snow is disappearing. We can choose the reality we've been told to accept, or we can do what we've always done. Defy the impossible. It's time to stand up for what we love, for what defines us, for our home. Protect our winners.
Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce 11-time Big Mountain Rider of the Year by Snowboarder Magazine and the founder of the best snowboards on the planet, Jones Snowboards, Jeremy Jones.
Thank you, Justin. It's been an honor working with the Green Sports Alliance, and I had no idea about that 1982 snowboard story, so I knew I always liked you, and now I know why. Before I did all that, I was a kid on Cape Cod, Massachusetts with big dreams. Yes. Red Sox. That got quiet here. But I had big dreams, and I bring up dreams because I'm able to be a pro snowboarder today because I first was able to dream big, then figure out through hard work and surrounding myself with smart people and finding mentors and learning from the people in front of me how to be a pro snowboarder. And it's really that same ethos that we're facing and need to embrace with climate change. I can tell you when you're in 8th grade on Cape Cod and you tell your school advisor that you're going to be a pro snowboarder, you don't get a lot of support there. And we see the same thing with this climate movement. It's to dream of things that have never been done before and figure out how to do them. It's exactly what we need with climate change. And when you do that, there's a lot of people that love to sit there and tell you it can't be done. So fast forward 15 years, I was able to carry out that dream. And at the time, that meant filming snowboard movies and using helicopters to do so. It's an amazing tool, a helicopter, to go into uncharted mountains. At that point, I'd been in 50 snowboard films. I was very proficient at my job. I was clockwork. Sponsors were happy. People were happy, but I knew I was selling the wrong dream, and I knew that I was being held back. That led me to start going into really remote places where you can't take a helicopter or a snowmobile or a chairlift and hike and spend long periods of time. And instead of going and doing 8 descents a day for a movie, it would be 3 descents in a 3-week period if we were lucky. That process along the way, the reason why I am still alive today is that I've become very in tune with the mountains. In doing so, I started seeing changes to the mountains, and it really bothered me. I mean, I committed my whole life to the mountains. That was really my sacred place, and to see them changing, to see the snow levels, to see it not snow at the lower elevations, to see these glaciers receding, to talk to the older people and ask them if this is normal, and have them to see the concern on their face of what they're seeing. It started growing, and I started realizing that something needed to be done. We were not doing enough for climate change. So I set out, at that point I was endorsing a ton of different products, and I wanted to take the royalties from that, put it towards climate change. So I talked to a friend in the environmental space and was like, where do I send my check to? And he came back and he's like, you need to start a foundation focused on climate change. There's just not someone in your kind of ecosystem doing this. So I hated that answer. That was not what I was looking to do. And I tried to talk myself out of that. And I remember a defining moment where I was in British Columbia and I was hiking a ski resort that at that point was grass. This was around 2005. And I was with some locals who were in their 30s, and they were telling me, pointing out all these great jumps and how awesome it was growing up there and skiing, and they had so much pride. And when I asked them, I said, well, why isn't the resort open anymore? And they said, well, it just doesn't snow down here anymore. And I was like, wow, these guys are 30 years old. What am I going to see in my time. Like they've lost their ski resort due to warming of winters. 2007, started Protect Our Winters with the goal to unite the winter sports community. At that time, I didn't know the first thing about climate change other than it was happening. So I surrounded myself with really smart people, the smartest people I could find, which was a bunch of scientists. Found a lawyer who snowboarded, didn't know there was such a thing. And so we got it up and running. And I would say we've, from the get-go, kids were always an important factor, because it's really what we're talking about is kids. I'm not protecting next winter. That's already baked in there. The work we're doing is for future generations. So we've talked to over 60,000 kids to this date. And what's astounding is we go into these schools, and school after school after school, we go, do these kids know anything about climate change? Have you guys ever mentioned the word climate change at this school? And surprisingly, time and again, the answer is no, which is astonishing to me that these kids who are dealing with this major issue, they don't even break down the basics of it. The other thing, we have a Riders Alliance, which is we use professional athletes, and we all know the power of professional athletes, and we work with over 80 athletes. And what they do, we take that same, you saw in this video, we take that same, those same mediums, those same places, the same style of marketing to inspire people to act on climate change. And an example, when we are up and running and really cranking on an issue like Keep Paris, for example, a recent campaign that we had, we touch over 12 million people on the mediums that all your kids are, on these social media platforms that are very hard to do. But why I'm excited to be here is not, you can learn all about Protect Our Winters online. I'm not going to give you a sales pitch on it, but why I am excited to be here is I feel like these sports teams are an incredible opportunity. We're dealing with a very divided nation right now. There's a lot of angst out there, and nothing brings people together more than a sports field or an arena like this wonderful LEED Platinum arena than sports. And in this day and age, that's more important than ever before. And when I started Protect Our Winters, I don't know if I would have ever started if I realized that in order, someone's getting after it up there. But in order to make a real dent on the climate front, we need our elected officials. It's a very unfortunate thing that climate change is a political issue, and sports is a great example. Sports is not a, it's, this arena that it fills up. It's got people from all different walks of life who vote different ways that come together nightly to cheer on their team. And my goal is that we can depoliticize climate change. And we can, you people here, your executives in this room and the people in this space, my goal is to get you to talk to your elected officials and get them to act on climate no matter what side of the aisle they are on. This should not be a political issue. It's starting to, we're starting to have Republicans come in on this, into this issue and stand up for it. And you sports teams can help more, and these sports athletes can help more. And make no mistake about it, the science on the climate change is crystal clear. We hear this rhetoric. I'm not going to go into that, but fact of the matter is, the planet is warming, glaciers are melting, the sea is rising. Scientists tell us that if we continue on this path, right now we will within 100 to 150 years, we will, the temperature will increase 5 degrees Celsius. That means the kid being, your grandkid that is either just born or yet to be born is basically coming into an uninhabitable planet. So my dream is to get it where we can all look at that grandkid and they can look at us in this adverse time and this challenge that we're faced, which we have the solutions. That they can look at us and say, thank you for embracing these solutions and acting on climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Lessons aplenty in that 5 or 10 minutes, weren't there? We started out with dream big, learn from those before us, and then, when faced with not much support, refuse to give in. Taking the money that you earn and putting it where your mouth is into climate change, starting a foundation, and really doing all of this, why? For our kids. This is what Jeremy Jones did, this is what he does, and this is what he's challenging us to do. And for someone who grew up on the Cape and probably spent a few too many drinks at the Beachcomber in Cahoon Hollow, that's a pretty good track record, and that's something we should definitely listen to. So, thank you, Jeremy. Now I get the pleasure of introducing another one of our colleagues from the Green Sports Alliance who's going to take us into the collegiate panel. Many of you have talked to this young man because in the space of, 8, 10 months you've been here, Rahul? 8 to 10 months, he's attempted to reach out at least once, if not multiple times, to every single member we have, and that's 500 calls a week or something like that. And I'll tell you what, if there's one thing that an organization needs, it's to know our members. And for that, we can thank Rahul Deveskar. Rahul?
Testing. All right. So for those of you who don't know me, I am the new membership manager here and really excited to get to know all of you personally. You are our strength and we're really excited to host you. So first, one more time, just want to give it up for Jeremy Jones. I think let's give him a round of applause. Definitely. It was a wonderful presentation, but more importantly, continues to demonstrate how sport can be the catalyst for real environmental stewardship. And I think that's very important for us to always remember. But even more importantly is our next panel, one that I am very excited to introduce. In my brief, albeit short but ever-inspiring tenure with the Green Sports Alliance, I've had the great pleasure of being inspired by all of you very regularly. Our members, as Joe mentioned, are the backbone of the Green Sports Alliance. They continue to demonstrate leadership, creativity, and to ensure that we all have the opportunity to play greener. While we have seen and heard some great stuff from our professional sports teams and venues, I'm excited to help shift our collective attention into the collegiate space. I love just thinking about all these collegiate events, the NCAA Final Four, the successes with College Game Day, and of course, the fact that collegiate sports are leveraging their cultural capital across every corner of our nation. The higher education community is, without a doubt, making significant contributions to sustainability in sports by connecting with groups we don't often talk about in the professional context: students, alumni, faculties, and student athletes, of course. During this panel, moderated by our dear friend Famida Ahmed from Stanford University, collegiate representatives from across the country will highlight how creative approaches can leverage athletics and a university's most important assets, its students. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our illustrious speakers.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? So it's my pleasure to be with you here today. I was looking around, I've never presented in an arena this empty and this full at the same time. For those of us who are in sustainability profession, glass half full is our motto. We make it work. We have many nicknames: salmon swimming upstream, glass half full, change agents, change makers, bit of a pain. That's all true, but it's our resilience that move us forward. I'm really pleased to be here today. I have some greetings to share. First, from ASHE, Association for Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. Some of you may have heard about us as the former Board of Directors Chair. We're very pleased to be partners, and we share some common DNA and really learning from all of you today. My second greeting is from CHESIC, California Higher Education Sustainability Consortium. It's a consortium of all the UC campuses, CSUs and CCCs. They are actually having their conference at UC Santa Barbara as we speak, so many of us couldn't be here today. But again, greetings, goodwill, and our lessons learned will be shared together. And lastly, my day job at Stanford University as their Director of Sustainability Programs and Business Services. We are really pleased to be part of GSA. We've been with you since its birth. And many of the challenges that our wonderful panelists will share with you today, we share in common. We're a campus that's actually done quite a bit. We like to say we've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 68%. We are 65% renewable energy provided. Our potable water consumption has gone down by 49. Our drive-alone rate is 50%. Our waste diversion rate is 64. Lots of good numbers that make us feel good from time to time. And then within minutes, we realize we have a long way to go. And it's really for our students, our community, our faculty, and what we learn and teach every day is what makes a difference in creating holistic citizens that will be able to make and endure the change that is to come. We have a wonderful group of panelists today. Opong Hemming, to my left, University of Florida. I know.
Go Gators.
He's got fans, I've noticed. Like, I try to hang out with him because people say hello more frequently. Lauren Lichterman, Operations Event Coordinator, University of Texas.
Welcome, everybody. Yeah.
Graham Overly, Sustainability Coordinator, Ohio State University.
OH.
And Katie Zeller, Sustainability Coordinator at UCLA.
Go Bruins.
They're a young, energetic group, sustainability professional experience ranging from 1 to 5, signaling the engagement of this movement, the age of this movement. So really interesting perspectives. We're going to do a vignette style with each of them sharing their stories for 3 to 5 minutes, and then we will engage in group conversations around challenges, institutional barriers, leadership styles, and fan engagement. So let's hear it.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Opong Hemming. I'm this athletic sustainability coordinator at the University of Florida. One quick thing I do want to mention is last night, our men's baseball team secured our first championship in NCAA baseball. So just wanted to shout that out. And then second, one thing that y'all should all know about the panelists is this is probably the first and only time you will see Florida sitting next to Ohio State, UT, and UCLA playing friendly. So just wanted to shout that out too.
Has to be friendly?
We have to be friendly. Just wanted to shout that out first off. But talking about what we do at the University of Florida. So my position, I am the sustainability coordinator in our athletic department. I'm housing athletics. 2 years prior to that, I actually worked for campus doing athletic sustainability for both our athletic department and our recreational department externally as a partner on campus. And then just last year in 2016, I moved over to do athletic work solely embedded in our operations department. So I wanted to start off with this slide, and I'm not boasting with this, but when you think of the University of Florida, you first think of athletics. And I think that's the same across colleges and universities across the country. You think of the University of Florida, you think Florida Gators. When you think Florida Gators, you think of Tim Tebow, Steve Spurrier, all the excellent athletes that came out of there, and what they produce are these championships. We just added our 39th championship last night. And the reason I put this up there is because this is showing our on-the-field accomplishments. We are good at what we do. We produce champions, we produce stellar student athletes, we produce the best in the nation. So there's no issue with us winning championships. Day one, when I came in and I met with our athletic staff, I'm focused on the off-the-field accomplishments, our off-the-field championships. They don't need me to coach soccer. Becky Burley does that. They don't need me there. I'm focused on what happens behind the scenes, because that is just as, if not equally as important, of what's happening on the field. Because when there's activities on the field, that means the stands are full with fans participating, sharing, supporting, and being Gators of the Gator Nation. So with this, I didn't want to put pictures up. I wanted to share with you a couple of lines that I hope that y'all can write down and take a picture of to start the dialogue later. But currently working on our strategic sustainability plan for athletics. And these are the three main goals that I'm working on. The streamlining the integration of sustainability in all of our operations, front to back, not just in our facilities, but when we talk about student athletes and fan engagement and community outreach, the sustainable principles that we talked about for years on years and the Green Sports Alliance is actively pushing, I'm integrating that to be a staple, a principle, a key component in what we do across the board in every department. Pushing forward with our sustainable initiatives that resonate with our global fan base. Like I said, last night we won, and there were retweets from across the country of people posting from Australia to Chile to South Africa that they're Gators that live there that support the movement. We want to hear from them. We want to know what they think about sustainability, and what's important to them is important to us, and we will push forward with what they bring up. Lastly is our environmental impact. We're trying to reduce, reuse, recycle in any sense imaginable. So what we do in those aspects, we focus on waste, but we also focus on our utilities. Legislation in the state of Florida is pretty unique in the sense that there's a lot of legislation surrounding our groundwater, so it limits what we can do. And athletics being a key user of a lot of resources, especially Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, what we can do to lower the impact on the environment is key to us. Some of our accomplishments I want to share briefly is our carbon neutrality commitment. Our athletic department is 100% carbon neutral. And when I say 100%, the key components of that is our staff and team travel, and also our game day operations. We use a local offset company, so all of our offsets are used in a 50-mile radius of our stadium. Not our town of Gainesville, but the stadium, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. And we collaborate with many different nonprofits and community members to make sure our offsets are used locally. We just started a sustainability fund in athletics. It's the same principle as a booster donating money for a student scholarship or to put their name on a facility. We recently created this sustainability fund to have a key source of revenue, key source of income for us to push forward with our sustainability goals and initiatives. And it only takes place because due to the success of our student athletes on the field, our athletic department is in the black when it comes to accounting in the books. So we have money left over. So we're not taking from a student athlete scholarship to push forward with sustainability. It's coming organically from the Gator Nation, from the fans themselves. They have the option, they have the choice to put their dollar where their mouth is, to put their dollar where their passion is in terms of sustainability. And lastly, about 3 weeks ago, we hosted a Sustainable Collegiate Sports Summit on our campus with our athletic department, and it was a very great turnout with other schools, large and small, in the Southeast United States, to come to Florida for not to us to tell them what we do, but to provide a forum of how we integrate sustainability in athletics, for them to understand the importance, to understand the practice, and to see what we do, for us to reach out to them in more of a mentor role, not a professor to a student, but to be a resource for them, to contact us, because once they get started in incorporating sustainability in their athletics programs on campus, it allows us to start building that network of schools in Florida for them to push forward with sustainability in the fashion that we do. That was my 3 minutes. Lauren, am I good?
I forgot to time you.
Oh, okay, well, that's all I have.
I think you took some of my time.
All right, hi everyone. So like Famita said, I'm Lauren Lichterman with the University of Texas Athletics Department. I think I'm supposed to click this. Okay. So I went to Texas as an undergrad and worked in the athletic department as a student, and was fortunate enough after I graduated to get hired full-time by the athletic department in facilities and operations. So I started in customer service, running our game day customer service program, and then our tour program during the week. And sustainability started as just a passion for me, just really kind of a hobby. And over the next few years, grew more than just a passion, and is actually in my job description now. So I am the sustainability coordinator for athletics. Our big focus is zero waste game days right now. We've done a little bit with energy, but we're really focusing on trash. So I hang out by a lot of dumpsters. The pictures on the slides are from our volunteers at a baseball game, and then a sort line that we were testing out at football this past season. So some of our accomplishments. We want to get to football. Football is definitely the end goal of having a zero waste football stadium. But before we did that, we decided that we would go across the street and practice at our softball and baseball facilities. Yeah, see what we could learn about going zero waste there, and take what we learned from those facilities and ramp it up just a little bit for our 100,000 person football stadium. So in 2014, we had the first successful zero waste event on campus at a 3-game softball series. We continued that in 2015 and 2016, added baseball to it. And then for this past school year, we actually had over 500 volunteers, I think closer to 600, at 3 different sports for the sustainability squad, which blew the numbers out of the water for our other years. This past football season, we had our first Sustainable Saturday at a football game, which was really great to provide some visibility to what we were doing with sustainability at football. And then this past spring, we were like, well, we got to do something more. We're so good at Zero Waste Series. Let's try for the whole season. And we actually had an entire 30-plus games of zero waste at baseball this season. So very proud of ourselves for that. So our next steps, this coming season, we are hoping to have at least one, 6 would be better, but at least one zero waste football game in preparation for an entire season of zero waste in 2018, in advance of the 2020 campus zero waste goal. You know, athletics is competitive, so campus said 2020, we said challenge accepted, we'll do it sooner, and that's where we're headed next.
Hello everyone, I'm Graham Oberle from The Ohio State University, and I'm also with the athletic department. It's a new position, and the position started just in October, and so for that I was a student and working with the Zero Waste program, came up, started full-time in 2015, and then last year joined on with athletics. And so from that, I implement the university sustainability goals in our department, and so the first 3 here are working with our students. We have out of the classroom experiments in our facilities. We reach out to the community, the Buckeye alumni, as all these schools are all over the world, and it's really exciting. Even here, there's 4 or 5 alumni and fans, and just seeing that outreach that our athletics program can have throughout the world. And so then we have our resource stewardship goals for campus. The most active one we've worked on so far in athletics is zero waste, but with the production of my position and staff time dedicated to this, we're working towards all of these goals now. And so working with students, and what makes us unique as a collegiate athletics experience is a lot of the people in this picture are students at Ohio State, but we also involve high school students from throughout Columbus. That can be their first time on a college campus, and we get to talk to them about what Ohio State means and not just what a football game is. And so we've seen some of them come to campus and become students, and that's really exciting to see them learn about sustainability and what college can provide. And so then that program, the girl with Brutus there, Tori, she's a synchronized swimmer. She knew about football zero waste, and she brought that to Gene Smith, and Gene Smith was like, hey, we're going to implement this throughout the department, starting with synchronized swimming. And so synchronized swimming, the students there helped us this year as volunteers, and we're really appreciative of the volunteer aspect of involving students from across campus. The girls here are in a sorority, we've had clubs, and this isn't just sustainability students being involved, but people that don't think about this every day. The synchronized swimmers, everyone on the team knows about recycling and sustainability because of that one student athlete. And that speaks volumes, much more than any of us could go into the team. And if we try and talk it, it will not be listened to near what Tori could. So this summer we are starting with 2 sustainability interns that are student athletes, and they're actually in our sustainability and business major. It's a new major at Ohio State, and it teaches our sustainability students how to incorporate business, something that I think I've heard a couple of people mention through this conference is the sustainability people need to learn about the business side, and the business people need to learn about the sustainability side. And so this major is really exciting, and then these 2 student athletes are able to implement their class knowledge directly in the department, and both of them have given me, just in the couple weeks they've worked with us so far, knowledge that they've seen in their team, just in traveling and what they see on campus, and we're going to take that knowledge and implement it throughout.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Zeller. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator with UCLA Recreation and Sports Venues. So what makes me a little bit unique is that I don't actually sit in athletics here. But one of the things that we're working on campus is zero waste, and we work extensively with the Pac-12, so shout out to the Conference of Champions. And through work with partnering with our sports marketing team, IMG, along with our custodial team, we got the Most Improved Award for 2017, reaching a 64% diversion rate. So we're just ticking along, increasing our diversion every year, trying to beat SC. I also work extensively with students. So what makes UCLA unique, I think, is that we have a 2-quarter-long academic course for students where they're placed on small teams across campus to do a sustainability research project. And recreation has been part of this academic course, serving as advisors since 2010. And when I was an undergrad at UCLA, I was on one of these teams working on Zero Waste Poly Pavilion, and it actually is what got me my job today. So for the past 2 years, I've been advising this team, and they've been doing an indoor air quality study for me at our rec centers. But other past projects include energy efficiency, low-flow shower heads, and other things all across campus, and it's been really great. And I also engage with students within our own department. This is a student leadership team that I lead a waste audit with every year, and it's really interesting to see them pick through what their own building is producing, and sometimes you find some really strange things, and it's a great educational opportunity. And I sit in student affairs, so I'm very student focused. Those are just a couple highlights.
Excellent. So we planned a few questions, but I have a new idea. Don't worry. What do you guys see? What do you see in them? Gives you hope? Yeah. What do they have in common? Yes, passionate, very articulate, organized, determined. They have a plan. What else? Competitive. Very true for the collegiate community. 2 more things. Courageous. And young. Yeah. So lots of skills and resources, and to many of our keynote speakers yesterday, the enthusiasm, the combination of the enthusiasm, passion, skills, when you align them, really great work can happen. And they've accomplished some of the programs that for many other campuses or organizations or institutions can take a really long time. So you make it look so easy. Do you have challenges? Do you want to comment on some of the challenges you face?
I can definitely share on challenges. Being at the University of Florida, school in the SEC, tradition is a big thing. With sustainability being not even a relatively new thing, a very new thing, trying to incorporate that and educate everybody involved, fans, athletes, staff, the community, about what sustainability is, why is it important, and what are the outcomes that we get from it. Because what we've been doing, like I said before, what we've been doing works. So educating all partners that have been a part of the Florida Gator brand a lot longer than me being so young, a lot longer than I've been alive, for them to understand what sustainability is and why it's important. It's been a big hurdle that I continue to see and overcome on a weekly basis.
Similar to that, so one person cannot do this project alone. We have a lot of partners that we work with to get to our zero waste goals, from our concessionaires or different catering, custodial, different athletic staff, campus staff, everybody's involved. And some people are not always as knowledgeable or as into sustainability as I am. And so one of our challenges has been getting sustainability as a priority somewhere on the list for all of our partners. Like, it doesn't have to be everyone's number one, it's my number one, but at least getting it in the top 5 for all of our partners so that we can all start working towards these goals. That's been a challenge that's so far so good. Still got a few more to bring along, but that's one thing we've really been working hard to do, is prioritize it.
Just time to understand the collegiate infrastructure and operations, and the fact that we're a government entity and the red tape involved. Coming in as a young person, trying to learn how a system operates and do that quickly to meet our goals. But it's exciting that they've dedicated other staffing resources to our department, and so I'm looking forward to that moving forward.
Yeah, I'd actually agree with Lauren that aligning priorities has been especially tough. And sitting in recreation, I'm trying to bridge the gap and the disconnect between rec and athletics. We live on a very space-constrained campus, and we're always doing this little do-si-do of sharing space. And I would like to unite the two departments under the banner of sustainability to kind of bring everybody together, since we're literally in the same physical space.
And you all have great leadership support, correct? From everywhere. Could you comment on what level of, do you see it more grassroots up? Do you see more mid-management support, or do you have very supportive presidents and chancellors who have already maybe made commitments? Say a bit more about that.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit of a mix. So we have very high-level support from our president, but actually the adoption of our sustainable practices policy came from demand from students years ago. And my personal leadership created my position, but again, the need was demonstrated through a student project. So it's kind of a mixture.
At Ohio State, the Zero Waste Initiative at Ohio Stadium started with the Sustainability Office, and now the department has taken ownership of it. And now that I'm there, I report directly with our top leadership, and they are taking ownership of the program. And with the sustainability goals that came out in 2015, we are able to measure our success, and it's made a big difference that they are internally judging themselves rather than just someone else from another entity of the university coming in and asking them to help.
Ours is a little bit all over the place. Some of our projects have been started from, we have a green fee on our campus, and some students wanted to do composting in one of our kitchens, so that kind of kicked off our composting program. Campus unveiled their sustainability master plan that was approved by our president, and so there's been a lot of top-down support as well. In athletics, our athletic directors are really supportive of it. And, you know, some of them are like, not really sure what you're doing, keep going, explain it to me a little more. But we've had a lot of support from all different areas, which has been very fortunate for that.
Yeah, in the brief history of sports sustainability at the University of Florida, the Office of Sustainability took on that role and did it all. And athletics was like, that's great, keep doing what you're doing, but on game days, stay out of the way. And then just this last year, while I was still a full-time staff member for campus, our athletic director requested to meet with our director of sustainability, and then our director of facilities and associate director for internal affairs, all met together and decided that what we've been doing 8 years prior was so impactful, athletics needs to take it over and do it internally. So it took a lot of time for us being an external partner on campus before athletics actually bought in, understood, and fully supported sustainability. But yet it was something that our athletic director, that was my first meeting on my first day. I met with Jeremy Fuller, athletic director, to explain to him fully what sustainability was in our vision moving forward.
Yeah. I hope this is starting to resonate with you. We can take a few questions from the audience, and as the microphone, I believe, travels, I'll throw another one. Staying with the glass half full, what are some of the tools and resources you would like to see or you already have that you can share for those who are here to learn from you?
Resources and tools. One, you need passionate people that are committed to work day in and day out. All of us work on a game day. We rarely get to see an actual football game in its entirety, but we are behind the scenes working, and we understand the impact it has working beyond the scenes. And I say our second resource, which is probably the most difficult thing for sports sustainability to get from step 1 to step 7, is finances, is money, it's revenue. Like I said before, we are blessed to do so, but we had to create a fund for us to fund our initiative moving forward. There's not just a pot of money in the cellar that we could just go take gold coins out of to pay for things. We have to have the revenue coming in order for us to put it where we would like it to go.
Do I have any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
How do you handle the disparity when people say to you, well, you come from a very rich institution, there's a lot of money in sports, and yet where's the budget that you guys should have to play with to communicate about sustainability, to enact fan engagement? Because we all know that, for the most part, whether it's collegiate or professional, the budgets aren't in the sustainability department. They're in this corporate sponsorship, they're in sales, they're in the athletics themselves. How do you deal with that? And how do you explain that to people when they challenge what you've been able to do, if they do?
I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, I have zero budget. I have no budget at all. So I use students a lot. And a lot of times students will volunteer their time, but also another resource that we have is the academics departments on campus. What is unique about a university is that you have all this brain capital available to you, and whether athletics or recreation can use, or rather, researchers on campus can use athletic space and recreation space as test sites for the research that they're doing, and also students participating in that research. So that's one way around it.
For us, I just try and debate that point and say, well, you've got to pay to throw away the trash no matter what, right? Like you're going to get the trash out of there. We're not leaving it in the stadium. So if you're paying for a landfill dumpster, pay for a recycling one and a compost one as well. We're not adding all this volume of waste. We still have to throw away 40 tons of waste on a game day. We're just splitting it between different dumpsters. So trying to find those arguments that like you were going to pay for it anyway. So just pay for it the way I want you to. Sometimes works, not always.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that point, it's just reallocating funds that already are in existence. So in our operations budget, like Lauren was saying, instead of just throwing it in the trash that costs money, we work with a composter and our waste hauler to take it to a facility. So we still have that same price of tonnage to take our compost out of place to a facility to do so. Now we need to find the money to actually sort it and then bring it back and use it at our athletic facilities. So the task is daunting. We just reallocate some funding to make the below, or essentially that ask for more money, less when we talk about budgets in our finance meetings.
The ball is in my court right now at Ohio State. They've asked us, what can we achieve if we provide you more funds? And so we're preparing that data this summer, and from that, hopefully we'll see some more progress.
Sounds like I have to start asking for more money.
Doesn't hurt. And one more, please. You're a good audience. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rhea Kim. I'm from the Millennials Chamber of Commerce, and I love seeing all your diverse millennial faces on the stage, so thank you so much for that. My question is, I think, Katie, maybe you can lead the question and the rest can follow. You talked about a way that you created your own job through your activism by being able to, for lack of better words, mobilize the students to be a voice. So whether it was a funding or an opportunity or a platform, the university kind of sort of had to succumb to that. So what are some of the strategies that you were able to implement to not only raise awareness about sustainability, but to really mobilize the students to serve as volunteers, but create enough noise so they have to listen?
Right, that's a great question. How do we start? It's kind of a partnership between us and the students. Sometimes I'll get approached by students. They're saying, I want to see more. I want to contribute. And so us as staff members, it's kind of our responsibility to give them a platform from which they can speak. Because a lot of times, at least on our campus, we have very vocal students, and they'll just kind of go and do things. And sometimes you got to reel them in a little bit. But kind of guide them in a way that they are successful. And then sometimes these student projects come up. Like, we're really lucky on our campus. We have a Green Initiative Fund that is pulled from their tuition. It's like $3 a quarter. And it's available for undergraduates to apply to perform sustainability projects that impact campus directly. So once they apply to that funding, they say, I want to put this on campus. And then once they do, they can leave with a legacy and like point to something on campus, say, I did that. So there's that funding mechanism that's available, and just us being there to support them and connecting them to the right people.
All right, well, the name of our panel was How the Collegiate Community Can Drive Sustainable Change. Can drive sustainable change. I hope we've given you hope, tools, and resources. Thank you, Opang, Lauren, Graham, and Katie. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Famita and panelists. How about another round of applause for our panelists? All right, I've been asked to keep my intro very brief. I do believe that's probably because I have a tendency to go and go and go. But you don't want to hear from me, you want to hear who's next going to be up on the stage. So we're going to balance the enthusiasm and competency you just heard from the opportunity that's there within collegiate sports to drive and affect change across sustainability with a session featuring professional sports. This next session is called the Sports Leadership Update. And I'd like for you, as you listen to these individuals speak, hone in on that middle word, leadership. I think you'll find that these individuals you're going to hear from exemplify all the qualities that we seek and desire when we're looking to strive to be a better leader, and the leaders that we want to follow in the work we achieve, the communities that we're in, and the places that we play. You'll also probably hear as they go through their stories that these individuals have, the organizations they represent rather, have been with this organization and leading this movement since inception. They've been with us since day one. They were part of the founding of all the work that we've done. And this group that's going to be before you is really the reason behind this. So I will say no further, and I'll bring our folks up. Our moderator for this evening is our own MC, Mr. Joe Corrala. Joe, come on up. Give Joe a round of applause. He's been working hard. Our first panelist is Susan Groh, the Associate Director of Environmental Programs at the National Football League. Great. Yes, round of applause for Susan. Our next panelist is Mr. Paul Hanlon, the Senior Director of Ballpark Operations and Sustainability at Major League Baseball. Let's give Paul a round of applause. All right. Next, we have Catherine Coomer, the Senior Director of Green Innovation and STEM Platforms with NASCAR. Catherine, thank you. We have Omar Mitchell, the Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility with the National Hockey League. Oh yeah, fire it up. We also have Lauren Tracy, the Director of Strategic Initiatives with the U.S. Tennis Association. Come on up, Lauren. And last but not least, Aaron Schneiders. I think I got that right. Yes, Vice President of Venues with the National Basketball Association. All right, round of applause. All right, Mr. Corral, the stage is yours.
All right. Yeah, we're going to film this from the side as we're talking. All right, well, thanks everybody for coming up. Just a quick historical note. I don't know if you're all aware, but the origins of this group being up here came out of the serendipity of, I guess it was a hurricane flying in somewhere in Texas last year, preventing our, at that time, keynote speaker, Kevin Johnson, from arriving on time. So Justin and Eric and I were scrambling around like, okay, we need to fill this. Let's get our partners from the leagues. So we're running around looking for who we can find. And we were able to get, I think, the three of you, Paul, Catherine, and Omar. We found them quickly. And I'll tell you what, it turned into one of our highest rated panels. So we're not stupid. We decided let's do it on purpose this year and enlarge it. So here we are. And this is going to be a free form. We're not going to do the 3 to 5 minutes each of structured stuff. We're just going to have a conversation. And I think we're best to base it off of the theme for this year. Play greener, engaging fans, athletes, communities. And I think with the suggestion I got earlier, Susan, I like that. I'd like to add a fourth group of engagement because at the league and association level, you also have the important task of engaging sponsor partners. So the Holy Grail, or I'll steal from Paul's sport, the Grand Slam is to get all four of those, right? You get a sponsor partner on board. You then get a campaign rolled out that engages the fans. They're very happy about it. You hopefully use some of your athletes, and you make an impact in the community. Easy, right? Super easy. Yeah, I'm getting all the nods here. Okay, so we're going to start right there. What's the easiest thing about that sort of, and I'm going to flip this because typically we're always asking, what's your biggest challenge? What's the hardest thing? Oftentimes, if we just stop and flip that question, say, what's the thing that you have found most successful? Not necessarily easiest, but a secret, a bit of wisdom, something that you all have found, okay, when we're trying to go for all four of those, or even one big one to get started so that we can get the other folks in line, much like if you're producing a film, you hook Martin Scorsese and all the actors come running, right? Well, is it that you start with, you need to get a sponsor on board and then everyone comes running? You get an athlete on board? Where do you start to help get things going? And I'll just open it to whoever feels moved to answer that first. I see a lot of heads nodding. Anybody? Susan?
I think engaging the community is the first thing.
Okay.
And reaching out to the community, which includes your fan base, your athletes, your local team. Sports has tremendous power to reach a lot of people. And I think if you can harness the enthusiasm of big events, in our case, Super Bowl, Pro Bowl, people buy into that. They want to be involved in some way. And if you can involve them around sustainability, that's terrific. They're excited just to be a part of the sport. And for us, if it's having them plant trees, collect books and sports equipment for kids, any number of projects that we do, the community really is excited about that. And I think things stem from that. And then you get the media, and then you get the athletes. You bring them on board too. But I think it all starts with community.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that this topic specifically is something that people are very passionate about, and and that's the easy part. You're understanding exactly what it is that drives people to be interested in this, and then the hard part is all the logistics that come from that, but that's also the fun part. It's like you have this idea, and you start to put all the pieces and get the right people in the room, whether that's going to be something you already have, say, budgeted, or you want to bring a sponsor on board or partner on board, or, for us, we, the different pieces of our organization internally, but also externally with our clubs. And that's really kind of the fun part of that, is really making those ideas come to life based on, all the different interests of the various groups.
So rather than just go down the line, I'm going to jump to the end and ask the same question to Erin.
I think we have a benefit with this group up here that we're not strangers. We all work in this space. So for us, it's easy because we have resources. We have people who have tried to do it in different ways, in different types of venues, and different practices, and we can pull from each other best practices and lessons learned for that way.
Any other thoughts, or should we move on to, yes, Catherine?
I was going to say, I think for us, we make it personal. You make it personal for your sponsor, make it personal for your fan, make it personal for that community. If you're going to plant trees, for us, we look at race markets where perhaps there has been devastation by wildfire, chimney top fires, and Bristol, right outside of Bristol, Tennessee. Hone in there, make it about that community, and then have your athletes and your influencers drive the positive change that can be a result of all of your work.
Omar, you have a furrowed brow. What's going on in there?
Pardon me? No, no, I'm perfectly fine. The NHL is honored to be part of this panel, and I'm pleased to be in front of 4K technology. 32 million pixels.
I heard this was the venue of the year, Aaron.
It's the SBJ.
It's a real
venue of the year.
national,
Just want to
national
point
treasure.
that out. It's a national.
Lauren, do you want to comment on that, or should we move on to the next one?
No, I want to echo what Aaron said. It's the lessons learned. I think, we really do learn from each other, especially in an opportunity like this, and thanks to the Green Sports Alliance for really helping to bring all of us together to have that opportunity to speak to each other, because, I think we've all been doing this for a long time, but when we first started, it was really like, well, how did you do this, and how did you engage your fans, and how, what are some good resources? And I think it's events like this and those sorts of relationships over time that we build that I think really helps.
So, and I'll build off of that. I think that, Eric said it. We were in front of, at the Alliance, speaking on a league panel back in 2012 in Seattle. And this movement was nascent, right? We were now at the start, we had the Green Sports Alliance in the Pacific Northwest, and we were now starting this movement. And to see where we've come now, right? Where we have corporate partners that want to engage with us and spending money. We have nonprofits that are really elevating and escalating their offerings to accommodate or to respond to some of the things that we want. We have fans that are getting vested and interested in this, and clubs that are building out platforms to tell this story. As an example, our Green Week. We had our Green Week in March where we have our clubs tell their story to their fans. All of our clubs are Green Sports Alliance partners, and the majority of them activate to tell their story to their fans using their athletes, getting their athlete engagement using PSAs, working with their corporate partners. So it's all to everybody who's on this panel, to their point, we could not have told that story 5 years ago, right? And I think it's to our credit that we've been able to come this far.
Yeah, I'm going to completely agree with that. I remember that we sat on that panel in 2012, and I think I started a week before that. And we were going through kind of what the programs that everybody was doing, and everything was starting. And this year, to look at 5 years later, and this is applicable to all of us, I was, putting some notes together before this and looking at all of the different programs that our clubs are doing and that we're doing as a league. And I'm amazed. We have 14 of our clubs here. That's just, it's remarkable. And there's thank you, in the middle of the season. And another just example, we put a press release together on Earth Day this year. It was the first year we were ever able to do this. And we had all 30 clubs participate, and and that's a testament to the folks in this room. And again, when you talk about the easy part of this, there's plenty of people and plenty of clubs that want to be involved in this, and having that interest right off the bat, allows us to continue to grow this program. We still have a lot of work to do, but the interest is there.
I have to agree with that. We've actually been doing this for 25 years. Omar teases us that we are the grandparents of sustainability. I tried to convince him to change that to parents.
I said it was parents.
yeah. Paul did say parents.
So rude.
But Sorry, Omar. But over those 25 years, we've seen a substantial change in the reception to the program. We started by just, doing a very basic recycling program in Atlanta in 1993 before anybody was doing it. Within a few years, people looked to that and said, hey, if they can do it at Super Bowl, we can do it. And now you find that happens in stadiums everywhere. Every big venue recycles. So that's been fun to see that progression. But also on the ground, as we go into communities, people want to engage now. People realize the value of sustainability initiatives. They're aware of climate change, and they're worried about it. This year in Minnesota, we saw a huge change. Houston as well. Rather than having to go out and kind of beat the drums and say, hey, join us, people were calling us and saying, what can we do? Can we host your event? And even competing to host those events that we do around sustainability. So big change, I think, all across the board. Athletes want to be engaged. Teams really want to be engaged. The fun part with teams is they try to, outdo each other, which makes it even better. But I see a huge shift just in the last few years in awareness and in engagement across the board.
So if there's a huge shift, and it's been in the last 5 years from, begging people to participate all the way up till people asking you to participate, what's the secret, or what are some of your success secrets around the storytelling aspect? Because it seems like each of you talked about, at one level or another, how we're engaging the different folks, but a lot of the answers seem to boil down to, hey, we've got a good story to tell, we engage certain people, start to tell that story, and everyone jumps on board. Not as easy for specific clubs, certainly not as easy for folks who are maybe in the nonprofit world, not as easy or as well done in the past for the environmental space, right? I mean, the masters of telling stories come out of big brands in sports and entertainment, and you all are to be applauded for that. So what can you share with the folks here listening and that would be an insight into your world when it comes to telling those stories? What aspects do you look for? Who do you start with? Where do you start? Where does the story come from?
I was going to say for us, we took years, plural, to set up our programs. Before we could even think about telling a story, we needed to make sure that those 3 areas of environmental impact in which we were focusing were rock solid, that we had whatever data we were going to report back on, that we had our entire ecosystem in place 38 weekends out of a year, because that's how often we race, and that these small towns, which is the size of a NASCAR event when they go into a community, that we were all on the same page. So I'll say that took at least 2.5 years. Once we had that in place, and also keep in mind, this is probably the biggest tip I could give, talk to your fans, talk to your consumers. We have this avid fan council of roughly around 12,000 avid NASCAR fans, and they tell us the good, the bad, the ugly every Monday after a race. So we utilized that. Tell us how you feel about the environment. Do you care? Do you not care? What do you want to see? What are your 3 areas of prioritization for you in your home? And for us, it was conservation of the environment, strengthening American energy independence, and American job creation. So understanding that our storytelling needed to tie back to what we knew resonated with our fan was crazy important. And then once you had that figured out, it's a television commercial during every single race broadcast that we have. It's a website. It's a social media presence. It's consistency in those talking points so that they get it, they aren't confused by it, and it's just continuing to push through.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. I think we've found that the story tells itself. We focus on doing a lot of community projects. We're out in the community a lot. And, people are interested in that story if they're taking part in it. What is it, the statistic? 71% of people pay attention to sports. We find that's particularly true with football, but with all of these leagues. But if you're out there and you're doing a project with kids, you bring in athletes, you're planting trees, you are doing something that involves the community, that gets tremendous buy-in. It's a good story, and people pick it up. And they're often surprised at, what we do hands-on. We get out there, we get our hands dirty. We get in the dirt with the kids and we plant trees. We planted well over 100,000 trees in Super Bowl cities. And I think it's a story that's compelling and people want to know more. They want to know why we're doing it, why somebody like the NFL is interested in the environment, and how it ties in with football. So it's a compelling story, I think, for all of the leagues. And I think the more you get out there in the community, the easier it is to tell that story.
I think it's also really important to stay authentic. And we're not going to go out and wave a big green flag because we're running big buildings and our teams are flying and we understand carbon footprint and we understand we're contributing to that. But let's be authentic and say, we recognize this, but here are some small things that you can do. And here, we're going to offset all of our all-star games. We're going to carbon offsets because we are aware that we use energy, but what can we do at home? What can we do in our buildings? What can we do as a team in order to make those small changes?
I'm going to build off that authenticity piece. I know I probably overused that word last year, but it is also one of the reasons why, when we started kind of more of our media push this year with it, we took a step back and we wanted to understand what all of our clubs were doing and look at how that story had been told over the last few years and just make sure that we were honing in on exactly what it was that was, actually going on in each of these cities. And now we're at a point where, we can really, tell that story and continue to. We did we had a partnership this year with Fox Sports University, which is Fox Sports has this division that has agreements with over 40 schools, and they run programs around, various things like PR marketing programs. And so from speaking through this conference, from speaking to the VP of Social Responsibility at 20th Century Fox, he told me about this program, and I said, look, I feel like we're at a point where we can begin to tell this story with the substance, with the authenticity, and we worked with them and the students to come up with a lot of different campaigns, and to Catherine's point, they were able to do a ton of market research on exactly what people cared about and what people cared about in this space, and what we were doing right and what we were doing wrong with it, and and for us, that will continue. We want to continue to grow that as we continue to grow the operations of all these programs.
And just to tie kind of everything together here.
I was going to say, you hadn't talked in a while.
What I will say,
Catherine and I haven't interrupted you in a while either, so we're doing pretty well.
You did use authentic a lot last year, by the way.
What I will say is, when we talk about stakeholder engagement, so as Paul mentions about understanding what the needs, so remember, we're at the league level, right? And we're supporting our clubs. And so stakeholder engagement is important. When we started our environmental sustainability program, we had our food recovery initiative, and we did our water restoration initiative, et cetera, et cetera. As this movement, I'm harking back to that thread, as this movement has grown, there's been education amongst all of our clubs, amongst our fans, and so we leverage that and we learn from that, right? So when we did our analysis of our carbon footprint 3 years ago, we saw that 75% of our carbon footprint was attributed to energy. So that changed how we thought about our environmental sustainability program to the point where we were looking at energy efficiency type measures for where we play, which is a giant refrigerator, okay? And it's that type of stakeholder engagement that we can go and be a resource for our clubs to pursue this work. It's reached to the point now where when we talk about sustainability, we talk about innovation. All of the vendors in that concourse, their products are all innovative. LED lights, compostable ware, the latest plastics. So those are the things that resonate when we go and have that narrative and we speak as resources for our arenas, partners, as well as our clubs. We're talking about innovation. We have an Office of Innovation in the White House, right? In addition to the fans, as the fans become more socially aware of it, whether it's because it's Gen Z or millennials, they're demanding this of sports properties to respond to their needs. So that's how we can translate that message. And I think that all ties into how this has grown. And to your original question, how does this narrative change? it's because of this groundswell, and it's because of we've become more sophisticated.
And to your point, in regards to millennials and Gen Z, like that demand is only going to grow. I mean, at some point in the game, I think someone said to me, millennials and Gen Z will have jobs and will have money to invest. And at that point in the game, it will be impact investments in which they're investing. So I think that, this is a really neat area to be in right now. And I think we're all at the forefront of some really powerful things that are powerful than all of us in this room. So to that point, I concur.
You make it sound so easy. And yet we know it's not. You all know it's not. So I want to flip it now. I want to do the opposite of where I started. Instead of talking about all the positives, I want to understand, okay, if the stories tell themselves, if we've got a lot of successes, if we know how to make it personal, and if we've been doing this for 5 years and now there's people want to engage with us, why isn't it more ubiquitous? Where are the hidden pitfalls? Where are the challenges? Where are the roadblocks to having this be fully mainstream, to have this be occupying inventory alongside other big consumer brand focuses? Where's the gap, and as you look at it, where do you want to be? I mean, this is great, and we're 5 years ahead of where we were when we first started talking, as you said. So if you think out, okay, 5 years from now, we want to be that much further ahead. As you sit here today, what are the things you think that need to be overcome? Are there attitudes in corporations within your own organizations? Are there proof points that need to be established greater and longer for the economic return? What are the toughest challenges that not necessarily keep you up at night, but that you look at and say, okay, we solve this one, and then we go from here up to here to the next level, to that Bill Walton's, if any of you were here, the 3.0 version of the sports industry. So tell us a little bit of where the gaps are and what do we need to do to overcome them? What are some of the big challenges?
I think that in regards to this, everybody in this room has this challenge. Everybody on the stage has this challenge of, when, obviously there's you can talk about recycling and everyone understands that, but there are elements of the sustainability, elements of sustainability that people don't readily understand, that are sometimes in positions, whether it's an organization, you're trying to go and you're trying to get financing for a project, or you're trying to have someone understand a new, new innovative thing that you want to do, and they don't have, I don't know if it's they don't have time, or they don't have the bandwidth, or in some cases they don't care. But for us to be able to translate and make that case and put it into plain English is still a challenge. The more and more we try to grow this, the more and more we want it to enter into people's mindset that they're not questioning some of that stuff because they understand it. I remember a few years ago trying to make the case for LED lighting, and people were like, oh, the lights are fine. Well, no, it is, they're more efficient, it's going to pay for itself, and, this amount of time, and you're constantly like going into your CFO's office or wherever is making that decision, and with this case, and it gets easier for them to understand over time, and, and I look at, the fact that the Mariners in 2015 put in LED lights, and then, a few more teams the next year, and now we're up to, I think, 13, at baseball. So, okay, we overcame that. Like, people understand why we want to do that. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it makes sense financially. It saves on maintenance costs. It's, saves on parts. And, those type of conversations still need to be had. And that's a big challenge, I know, for us and for any of our clubs to get that done.
I think we've been really fortunate at NFL to have tremendous support on the league level for the initiatives we do. So time is always a challenge because we know there's always more we could do and would like to do. But I think one thing that has helped and may address some of what you're talking about, Paul, is we're always looking to make sure that our environmental initiatives are consistent with sound business practices. And if they are, and if you always look at the bottom line and you can show people how they can save money by reducing their water consumption, their electricity use, that's a great place to build from. And that's something that we've come back to time after time, is that need to show people how this is just plain good business practice. Aside from PR, fan engagement, and any of this, it just makes sense, especially when you look at the facilities.
Can I before we go on, can I challenge that a little bit, Susan? Sure. Where does it break down then? Because if it truly is always consistent with sound business practices, I would expect to see PSAs at every game, not just at the Jewel events. I would expect to see engagement as being as ubiquitous throughout the season. So I'm wondering if there still aren't some hurdles to overcome even for you and your efforts.
I think we have a different focus at NFL. We don't look at it as PR, and we don't really look at it as a chance to tell our fans what to do as much as we want to show them what we're doing. We find that to be effective at the league level. People tend to follow the example of what we do at Super Bowl. We engage fans by getting out and doing projects with them and by having recycling bins in the stadium. So the focus for us has not been so much on PR. No, that is shifting a little bit. We do more and more around that, especially in our host communities. We're seeing support there. But our focus has been a little different that way.
Okay. Lauren, I cut you off before you were going to respond.
I was actually just going to piggyback on something you said, Omar, about it's just the innovation is having that. I lost a little bit of my train of thought. But as you mentioned, so 5 years ago, the business case was different than it is now. So when you argue about, LED lighting, the technology has finally changed even within this short period of time, that it really does support your argument that, this is the best way to proceed from a business standpoint, from a financial standpoint. So that thankfully we do have that innovation in this space, and thanks to all the vendors upstate, around here to bring us to that point.
Yeah, and I think when it comes down to it, nobody wants to be the first to jump because they need it to be proven. For good business, sound business decisions, you need data and you need things that back it up. So I think there's a little bit of trepidation to be the first one to kind of jump into it, and so everybody sits back, and if you're gonna fall, you're gonna fall. We're gonna watch them fall first, and then we'll figure out best practices. So I think, again, going back to my first statement, is just opening the network, really talking to each other. For LED, it's kind of the same with us. We started a number of years ago, and by next season, 50% of our buildings are going to have LED sports lighting. Where in 3 years ago it was kind of a touch and go, nobody was super convinced. The fact that things can change so quickly in 3 years just based on results and data and best practices and technology, I think is going to help those decisions happen a little faster than they may have in the last 5 years.
I want to respond back to your question, Mr. Kerala, because we always talk, when we talk about our sustainability platform, we don't see this as something that's going to change overnight. The Grows have been doing this for 25 years, right? We've been doing this since we started in 2010. This is a much longer journey. We acknowledge that, right? And so to that point, there are things that are going to be good success stories because of it makes good business sense, and therefore will be first movers, and because people see the innovation and see the benefit of investing in that technology. And there are also going to be things that are going to take a much longer time to engage with. And whether that's a function of the fact that, I'll go back to the point that this movement is something that as more people get involved with, they'll start to expect to see more PSAs. They'll expect the NFL to be doing Super Bowl greening initiatives even more. And all of our initiatives, NASCAR Green, to be out there even more, planting more trees. So the point is that it's not a challenge. I don't believe, I'm an eternal optimist. I don't see this as a challenge. I see this as something that is to be capitalized on. And to push that needle forward is what members of the Green Sports Alliance and this community is all about, right?
I have to back that up too, Omar. I think opportunities like this to share best practices are so important because we're doing different things and it's good to hear how they work, what's a challenge, what doesn't work, and to just share the way things can work the best, I think is terrific.
And I have a question for us. Do you guys know of any other conference where you've got 6 leagues sitting on the same stage, sharing best practices about a business?
No.
Can I get a mic check from Omar? No. Okay. That's this movement. You know what I mean? That's the Green Sports Alliance movement. It's rare, and I think it's unique that we are all here to push it forward because we realize it's bigger than all of us. But at the end of the day, too, when you mentioned challenges, I think the one challenge, you were almost going to interrupt me, weren't you? Yeah. It's a common occurrence for Paul Hanlon. But I think the one challenge is always being able to tie back. I mean, there's corporate shared value in all of this. It's corporate social responsibility, right? But there's shared value in sustainability and the business and being able, to your point, to make that case, but also to make that case for your general consumer. For me to make that case for 80 million NASCAR fans, it's not easy, but that's where the ripple effect starts. And that's where the change begins. So I think this whole group is a really special, and I think everyone in this room, it's really special what we're all doing here together. And it's unique.
Did you want to interrupt now, Paul?
No, she said what I was going to say.
I think we all realize the significance of this movement and that none of us can do it alone. It's going to take all of us and so much more to address the issues out there. So I think it is a cooperative thing that we're doing, and I'm thrilled to see everybody here that's working on it.
And for us, we had, Julia Landauer, who is one of our NASCAR drivers, being here today. Her takeaway when she left was that she needs to do more. She needs to learn more. She needs to get out there more. It's things like this, while we have drivers that get out and that are planting trees or helping with recycling programs or whatever it may be, there's always more that can be done.
And on that point, with Andrew Ferentz, who retired from the NHL, joining the board of the Green Sports Alliance, we have that type of voice now to get more athletes engaged and to tell that story from the old guard and transitioning to the new guard. The good thing about it is that the new guard, the new folks on the block, the new athletes, the young athletes, hopefully have this built into their DNA so that we can leverage that, right?
They get it.
They do.
They're the millennials we're talking about that learned about this in 7th grade. Reduce, reuse, recycle.
And
was
we see that
t-shirts they wore.
when we do the PSAs, we have the younger athletes that are actually saying, yeah, we want to put our name to this. We want to tell that story. It's going to take time, but we'll get there.
So that's a perfect segue, because the question I wanted to ask next was, for years we've been talking about the holy grail of certainly any marketing, not just for environmental causes. The holy grail is to have your role models be the spokespersons for whatever it is that you want to have happen. In at least American society, if not around the world, the greatest role models that we have are athletes, musicians, actors, probably those big 3. Athletes among those have sort of a stratified tier because people have this emotional bond, and I think it's somewhere to do with the competition and the heroic aspect as opposed to just being entertained. So if that's really the ultimate spokesperson, what do we need to do, or what are you guys doing to encourage them to participate more? And the flip side of that question is, where are your hands tied? Because the realities are, there are collective bargaining agreements, there are team restrictions to how many times a year you can talk to a certain athlete, and I'm sure it differs by sport and differs between your associations, but there are restrictions, right? So I'm really interested to hear your view on using athletes more going forward, and what's worked so far and what you hope to have happen.
Yeah, I think we create the events and the athletes follow is kind of how it works for us. Rather than have just one or two athletes who are our key spokespeople, we create environmental events and we invite the teams and the athletes to be involved. And it's great. You know, the athletes attract the fans and the people, but they also help get the message out. And we create projects where they get to get in there and work side by side with the community, and they love it. So I think it's a little different approach than just having a couple key spokespeople. Whatever team we're working with, whatever city we're in, we create events. For instance, in Orlando, we built community gardens in a low-income neighborhood. We're working to address food insecurity in a lot of areas, wherever we can. And we just invited some of our legend athletes. They spent the whole morning, you know, building these garden boxes, working with the neighbors, teasing each other mercilessly. They had a great time. And that's been our approach. It's been really successful. It's not a huge commitment of time on their part. They're very visible, and it helps us to get our message out.
You educate them. The more you know, the more you grow, right? And then you make it personal. I mean, I'm going to use that response. The more you can make it personal for them, the more passionate they're going to become about it. I think the more success you have around it all.
I just want to give an example to illustrate the point. And Susan, you were talking a little bit about it. We just had our draft in Chicago last week, Friday. And one of the things that we usually do in our draft is we have our Legacy Tree Project where we plant 30 trees in the local market. This year is 31 because we have a new team in Las Vegas, Go Vegas Knights. But my point is that we invited the Chicago Blackhawks players to come, and they came to help plant the trees. Now, Patrick Kane came, we had some alums that came out. The point to that was that, you know, I don't know if they were environmentalists, but what they came there for was because they wanted to participate in something that showed respect for their community. We invited 30 or so kids from a local Montessori school to come, and the athletes went and you know, played in the dirt, well, you know, played the dirt and put the mulch in and engaged with it. And it was such a meaningful moment to see these athletes engaging with their local communities in a park, in a underserved neighborhood. And that's the type of power that we provide the athletes the opportunity to get involved without making it to be environmental and you have to be green and you have to drive your Prius. And, you know, so it has to be accessible to them. And that's the responsibility of the leagues, of the clubs and sports properties, to be able to provide those opportunities so that they can engage in a meaningful way. And as I said last year, if you remembered, when we all boil it down, sustainability and this awareness is all about respect. And that's what I like to steal that comment from Andrew Ferentz. It's all about respect for you personally, respect for your community, respect for your fans, respect. So that's a way to engage with them, get them more involved.
I think what you're starting to see as well is this group of individuals, these leagues, come together in more instances to be even more powerful than how we are individually. So for example, I think for the first time ever, we're talking about putting NASCAR drivers and NBA basketball players together at a tree planting event, local kids, and first responders. So how do we continue to cross borders to have athletes from all of our respective fields get together to push this message? I think it's really powerful and something that I know I personally am excited to see. So when you ask about the next 5 years, kind of what's next, that's what I always have in the back of my head. How do we make it bigger?
And I think this group, the people in this room, the Green Sports Alliance, can be, you know, a facilitator for that. I think that, you know, when we talk about, you know, all of us working together in different, you know, different projects, obviously, you know, the amount of time we've all, you know, worked together over the years, that's one thing, that's a bond, but we all are under this same umbrella, and I think that's an important function that this organization can serve as well.
Not to call the other leagues out, but I mean, step it up, guys. I'm just kidding.
That was not what I was saying, but thank you.
Just kidding. No comment.
All right, so I want to take us in our final direction, and that's engaging the sponsor partners. We talked early on about where do you start, and we talked about starting with the project and the events, and then people will come, and we've talked about working with the fans, and we've talked about with the athletes as well. It's a different animal when you're talking about approaching people who are traditionally want to tout their brand and in many times are used to you walking up to them asking for 7 figures or 6 figures at least. So when you start talking about these kinds of engagements where you're looking to do community, environmental, incorporate athletes, are these more attractive to big brands? Or in what way can the leagues, in what ways do you do best the bringing your sponsor partners into the fold to really want to participate beyond just slapping their logo on something for millions of dollars?
I think you have to find meaningful ways for them to engage. And if I can give you guys a quick takeaway, something that we learned through trial and error, is you don't engage through sponsorship or marketing. You engage with their sustainability people. Took us a while to figure that out. Sponsorship has its own, pot of money and its own objectives, and it's not always, it's not sustainability, it's sponsorship. So we learned that you have to do a lot of research, figure out who your sponsors are. We all have our key sponsors, and then do a ton of research to find out where you connect on sustainability initiatives. Something we spent 18 months doing. So 5 years ago, we brought Verizon on as our key sustainability sponsor. And they had some interests that were matching ours. They were into urban forestry, which we do with them. They're a huge partner in that now. We had our Super Kids project, which is a sports equipment book and school supply donation project. They have Hopeline. So they wanted to, in addition to having schools collect the items that we had always done, they wanted to have kids bring in used cell phones that could be reconditioned and used for domestic violence shelters. In addition, they've brought in grants for domestic violence shelters that range from $10,000 to $45,000. So a way that they saw they could activate. And then something that they came to us with that we never considered is they wanted to do an e-waste event. We don't generate e-waste at Super Bowl. But we were able to work with them, and now it's something we do every year. We do a huge e-waste event in the community, and Verizon takes the lead on it. But I think the big takeaway for us and that we'd like to share is to connect with your sustainability people directly. We're sustainability, just about every big corporation has a sustainability department. Those are the folks you want to talk to. And do your research, find out where your interests meet. And then it just kind of takes off from there. Verizon has brought more to the table every year. They've joined us now for a Pro Bowl and the draft as well. And that partnership continues to grow. And I can see expanding and bringing in more sponsors. The issue there is always time to manage those relationships.
I think that merging the multiple entities and departments within your organization is a very important piece of this along those lines. We're very fortunate, and it's been a recent thing, but at baseball we have a corporate social responsibility group, and we meet every 2 weeks, and it is something that has been so incredibly beneficial to the organization and understanding all the different entities that are under this umbrella. And we have an event at the end of next week in Miami where we're putting together a community event, cleaning up a park. And because all of these different departments were talking, whether it was the environmental group, whether it was our youth initiative, whether our marketing department, PR department, we have the ability where everybody's in the same room and convening in this opportunity every few weeks. And this event that we're putting together is a combination of our green team, which we're bringing in, the college students, the educational program that we've had for years through the University of Minnesota, as well as our different youth programs that are being run in Miami, and we're all getting together and we're going to work on this park, and there's this corporate sponsor attached to it. And so, really opening up those lines of communication and making sure people understand that everybody needs to talk to each other, and it provides this, what will be an amazing event for us.
You're absolutely right there, and we do find we work across all different departments now. So we work under special events, but we also work with corporate social responsibility. We do work with marketing and sponsorship. They're always in the loop. And we work with PR and communications. And everybody has a buy-in to sustainability.
That's the way it should be, right? I mean, sustainability should be embedded into every single business unit within your organization for it to truly be successful. For us at NASCAR, each program that we have is tied to a sponsor. So we identified areas where we knew we had a negative impact, running a fossil fuel, for example. 38 weekends out of the year, 40 race cars in our national series. And, in looking at that, actually resulted in a relationship with an organization called Growth Energy. So we run a biofuel now, Sunoco Green E15. It's 15% ethanol biofuel that we have run for 11 million miles in our 3 national series. And we talk about that. And what's important for them is that at the end of the day, too, you can now buy E15 at the pump. So it's walking the walk, it's talking the talk, and then educating your fans on what they can do to also reduce greenhouse gas emissions themselves by making a behavior change. Safety Clean. There's a lot of automotive fluids that are used in NASCAR by our teams or tracks. It's over 200,000 gallons of automotive fluids a year. We recycle all of that. So anything that we're doing, we're going to tie it back to a sponsor organization just to make it as impactful as possible.
And just really briefly, when you can find the sweet spot where a sponsor aligns with your objectives, when you find that sweet spot, that's the perfect opportunity. An example of that, we launched our Greener Rinks campaign at the end of October of last year, at the beginning of October. It's an initiative to try and enhance the community rink infrastructure. And we worked with our partner Constellation to go and get that type of enhancement, whether it's through energy efficiency, retrofits, upgrades, new lighting, all of that good stuff. So the point is that when you can find those opportunities, that's where you'll see perfect overlap. And we're looking actively for those other sponsors to help us fill out those objectives.
It's a great program, by the way.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
I think we passed our 1 minute mark.
I think this goes back, whether it's you as a club, a team, an organization, as an athlete, as your sponsors, it comes down to it has to be authentic. And they have to believe in it, and they have to be behind it. And it's not going to stick unless it's an authentic buy-in. And I think when looking at your partnerships and identifying where your like kind of levers are, making sure that it's an authentic partnership, I think makes it even that much more successful.
I don't really know the day of slapping logos anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like there's always some program that is attached to it. It's not just used as an advertising tool. It's innovation. It's being,
like you said, that sweet spot. It's finding that sweet spot where you guys can marry up in something that is an organizational priority for both of you.
and to Omar's point before, it takes time. It does not happen overnight because it can't just be done. It's got to be thought very thoroughly because it's got to be strategic and make sense for all parties involved.
Aaron, I think to your point too about authenticity, I think it's so important to find true, tangible projects that actually make a difference in the community because sponsors want that. You know, they want to engage, they want to involve their green teams and get out there and actually do things. So I think that's hugely important.
So sadly, we've run out of time. And I just have to say, to me, this is one of the most fascinating discussions that we could possibly have. Really appreciate the camaraderie, the willingness to be vulnerable and open, the expression of your opinions. This is not something, and you pointed this out, Catherine, you can't go anywhere and get 6 different leagues and associations on the same stage being willing to share and collaborate about what they do, what they want to do, what works, what doesn't work. So heartfelt thanks from the Alliance. I'm just expressing it on their behalf. And how about a round of applause, please, for our league members? Thank you all.
And Susan, congratulations.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Selfie? Yes. Yes, we got to do a group selfie. All right. Pardon us, we're going to do a group selfie.
We spared anybody.
All right, I'll take it from the left end if we can get down the line. All right. There we go. Can we get in there? Yes.
Lean in.
That
Pumpernickel.
Thank you. Round of applause for our leagues, please. So a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'm going to introduce another one of our board colleagues here as we head into our happy hour for the evening. I guess it's not called that, it's called the Bud Light Friendly Hour. Sorry about that. So here we are, it's the end of day 2. We hope you've been enjoying and learning. And look, the bottom line for us here is find one thing that you can take away with you to do some good and meet one person. If you do both of those things, then hopefully that'll be well worth your money. And there'll be an opportunity to meet a lot more people tonight following the upcoming Bud Light Friendly Hour. We have a wonderful evening planned. Hopefully a lot of you are coming to our Green Sports Celebration, brought to you by many of these folks, MLB, NHL, NFL, NASCAR, NatureWorks, and Renew Merchandise. And that'll take place right here at 7:20. We'll have a fashion show, and it's actually an eco-fashion show. We'll be seeing the latest sustainable fashions from Sac State University students. And of course, we'll honor our Environmental Innovator Award winners and recognize our 2017 Environmental Leadership Award. So all of this begins at 7:20, so join us here for that. Starting tomorrow morning, breakfast at 8 a.m., same place as today in the Plaza Concourse. And then we'll have first programming will actually be breakout sessions, so we won't have main stage until about 9:30, okay? And now, to kick off the evening's festivities, I'd like to ask you to please join me in welcoming Joe Abernathy, Vice President of Busch Stadium Operations at the St. Louis Cardinals and Green Sports Alliance board member.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Joe, for keeping it light and keeping us moving here today. And I get to bring up the end here. I have the great pleasure to introduce to you guys one of our newest summit sponsors, the folks from Anheuser-Busch and in particular Bud Light beer brand. You know, Bud Light may be a rookie here at the summit, but Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch are seasoned veterans when it comes to environmental sustainability. I had the great privilege of working at Anheuser-Busch almost 40 years ago in the 70s and 80s. And at that time, environmental stewardship was a core belief in that organization. And I think one of the many reasons I find myself here today, because I grew up in a company that believed preserving the environment was the right thing to do at that time. You know, they've done things for years that we talk about regularly here. Water. Omar, you think water is important to hockey? How do you think how important it is to somebody who's brewing beer? And that is the biggest part of the process. Anheuser-Busch has been concerned about water quality and conservation for decades. Recycling. Back when I started with Anheuser-Busch in 1978, they started a company by the name of Container Recovery Corporation, and through the 70s and 80s, they were the largest recycler of aluminum in the nation. They took it on, realizing that that was a renewable resource that didn't have to be wasted every time they sold a beer. What did they do with that recycling aluminum? They made cans. Metal Container Corporation was a leader in the industry in the streamlining of aluminum. You remember how those lids got smaller and smaller and smaller on your beer cans? That's because Metal Container and Anheuser-Busch were concerned about the amount of aluminum that they were using in their cans. This is 50 years ago this stuff is going on. And food waste, you think rockin' Wrap It Up is a big deal? Do you guys realize that the spent grains from the Budweiser and Bud Light products that you guys have been drinking for decades has been recycled, it's been dried out, and has been feeding cattle throughout the United States for more than 50 years. These guys are pros when it comes to environmental sustainability. You probably know Bud Light more directly these years because of their involvement in sport. I mean, you can't go to a sporting event in many of our buildings without seeing Bud Light, Budweiser, Busch, Michelob Ultra, one of their many products being advertised. So I think it's only fitting that in the greatest intersection of sport and environment that we have Bud Light here as a sponsor. Come on, I'm supposed to clap for that. So that's why I'm so pleased and proud to introduce to you our representative from Anheuser-Busch, Mr. Brent Hughes. He's the trade marketing manager for Northern California and one of my newest best friends. Brent.
So I got the best spot because I've got just beer and getting ready to give you a toast, and then it's happy hour or Bud Light friendly hour, and then the celebration. So hope everybody hangs in there. As Joe mentioned, my name is Brent Hughes. I'm the trade marketing manager for Anheuser-Busch in Northern California. So I manage all of our sports relationships with all of our professional sports and some of our college sports, which starts right here in Sacramento in this beautiful building with the Kings, across the freeway with the River Cats, in the Bay Area with both the two baseball teams, the A's and the Giants, with the two football teams, the Raiders and the Niners, with the Earthquakes, and with the world champion Golden State Warriors. So it's been a busy, it's always a busy year for me going through. But even before that, I got started in sports. I grew up here in the Bay Area, and I started working for the Oakland A's when I was a sophomore in high school, which kind of catapulted me into St. Louis, where I worked in corporate media and sports marketing for 5 years, managing all of our pro sports properties and league relationships. So dealing with corporate partners and dealing with sponsorships has been part of my upbringing for a while. And one thing that has rang true with that is that the best partners I've always had are the ones that weren't just business associates, but they were friends. You know, the friendships that I developed in my job and I still continue to develop are the ones that tend to work and function the best. So that kind of brings us to the Bud Light Friendly Hour and Bud Light being famous amongst friends. And as Joe mentioned, sustainability, Anheuser-Busch has had a long-standing commitment to sustainability, and we're looking to do more. As Joe said, water is the #1 ingredient. And we take pride in conserving this vital resource by cleaning up and protecting the watersheds that supply our communities. In 2017, we're hosting more than 30 river cleanups for our employees across the country. In 2015, Anheuser-Busch invested $20 million in our Los Angeles brewery to improve water efficiency. We recently announced a global commitment to secure 100% of purchased electricity from renewable sources by 2025. We started this, if you might have, any of those that might have driven by 80 by our Fairfield Brewery down here, you might have noticed the 2 turbines that we have out front that help supply the energy for the plant. What you probably didn't see is the 7-acre solar field that's out behind it. Anheuser-Busch has an average recycling rate of 99.7% in our breweries, and we strive to incorporate recycling plans into all the events we do. So with that said, I'm going to ask Joe to come up here. And Joe was right about Metal Container Corporation. At one time, we recycled 100% of the aluminum that we used in our products, in our packaging. So I'll just say, Joe, let's raise a Bud Light. To all of our friends at this summit, and to kick off Bud Light Friendly Hour, thank you guys all for having us here.
All right.
Cheers. We look forward to seeing you guys up on the concourse. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Brent. I think this party is up on the concourse, right? We're upstairs for an hour, and then we come back down here for the celebration. Okay, you heard the man. Let's make friends.